A lot of people think that the weather in Arizona is really hospitable for succulents, but it's not, at least not for all succulents. I want to show you what the aftermath of summer looks like in my outdoor Arizona garden. Now, we have this side yard where I'm standing right now, and it's surrounded by concrete and rock. So it's basically like a brick oven in the summer, and it gets direct sun. Other than we did put up some shade cloth. You can see some of the gaps right now. We have a pergola with shade cloth where I keep most of my outdoor succulents, but I'm going to show you what survived this summer and what didn't, so you can see why full sun and heat in Arizona is not great for most succulents and how you can adapt that to your own climate. All right, so starting here on the patio, this lovely little basket used to have a bunch of crassulas and echeverias. You can see a ghost plant that used to be on it, and it has been on the patio for the entire summer under the shade cloth. Now, it might get a little bit of direct sun occasionally, but definitely in the afternoon heat, it's in the shade. But you can see the only thing that survived is the elephant bush. And you'll notice that's a theme throughout here. Elephant bush does really well in the Arizona heat. It actually does well in full sun as well. I'll show you some of that in a little bit. But you can see this beautiful ruffled echeveria that I had has just totally melted in the summer heat. Now, there's a fine line between watering enough and watering too much in the summer. And this summer, for sure, my succulents definitely got a little bit more dry than normal. So we are renting, and I don't have a great way of watering these regularly. So I have to remember, and I am using the Succulent Tracker app to keep track of that. But that doesn't always mean that I do what I am supposed to. So one of the saddest things that I lost this summer was this Flapjacks Kalanchoe. It did really well the past 2 or 3 summers, but I think this summer was just too hot for too long, and it didn't get quite enough water, and it dried up. This Mother of Thousands also, it survived, but it did struggle a little bit over the summer as well. So the heat combined with a lot of sunlight is just brutal for a lot of succulents. Now, this planter box has done really well. You can see there is some dappled light here. The shade cloth that we have is not perfect in creating, a completely sun-free area, but this is morning sun, so it's not quite as hot. But this area has grown really well. Part of it is the plants that I've put here I know are ones that tolerate a little bit more heat and a little bit more sun. They're all considered full sun succulents, but full sun in Arizona just isn't the same as full sun in somewhere like the Pacific Northwest or even Southern California. So these succulents have been watered about once a week in the summer. They're in a decent amount of soil, and the soil, while it does drain well, does also retain a fair amount of water. So it doesn't dry out super quickly. But you can see there's a lot of cactus in here. These agaves are pretty big, and the size plays a really big role here too. So this little barrel cactus, you can see, is a little bit more yellow on the inside than its larger counterpart. So being smaller makes it more difficult for succulents to withstand a higher temperature and more sunlight. We have these aloes that are getting kind of a bronzy color, and that's just a combination of a lot of sunlight and not quite enough water. Now in the winter, I wouldn't water these once a week. That would be way too much. They'll actually probably go a couple weeks without water just because it's cooler. In this particular area, there's less sun. We don't get any direct sun here in the winter, which is rather unfortunate. And they'll go quite a long time without water. Something else that's done really well is this dinosaur back cactus. You can see it has a lot of dried up and dead spots. Those are from the last 2 years when figuring out the watering was really tricky. Last year we had hardly any rain during the summer, and so it was all me just watering it. And the previous summer had been really humid, and so I had overcompensated and I had watered too much that summer because I wasn't paying attention to humidity. So it had some spots that dried up because of that. But this one has done really well, and it gets a fair amount of direct sun. It's right underneath the shade cloth, but the shade cloth kind of blows, and it doesn't quite shade it the whole year. So that one has done really well. I do have this little potted one. We had to move it off of the ground because our tortoise started eating it. It's a roller coaster, a puntia. But all of these succulents that you see here, these are all great options for high heat and lots of sun. Now getting over into the full sun area, it is shaded right now, but within an hour this will all be in full sun, and it'll be in full sun for most of the rest of the day. This is an agave that I got from our local Buy Nothing group. So this type of agave sends out a ton of pups, and so in our area it grows really well, and people tend to give out pups every spring and fall when they are cleaning up. So that one, I actually just planted it in the spring, and it rooted really well, and it has stayed looking really good throughout the whole summer. And like I said, in very direct sunlight. This is both of these actually are also free pups that I got from a neighbor. You can see there's a little bit of elephant bush right along here. These are cuttings I actually just took a few months ago. So in the heat of summer, I planted some elephant bush cuttings, and they've done fairly well, all things considered. This area is kind of a clay-like soil, so I do have to be a little bit careful with watering, but the agaves have really seemed to thrive with it. So another elephant bush. This one is potted. I believe it's a decumbent version, which trails over the side. And then this agave I planted a couple years ago. We got it for like $15 at Costco in a gallon container, and you can see it's much bigger than a gallon now, and it's got a bunch of babies coming up as well. So I'm going to actually pull these out in a couple weeks once it cools down a little bit, and we'll repot them. It's going to be easier to get them out now than when they get bigger. So and by repot them, I really mean replant them. Some of them may go into pots, others may just go back into the ground somewhere else. This is an elephant bush cutting I've had for years. We've probably had this for 4 or 5 years. This one has stayed pretty small, but it's grown really well. That was another free agave pup from a neighbor. Another free agave pup from a neighbor. And then this elephant bush we've also had for years. It started out as just like 2 or 3 cuttings that we got from the pool house. When the landscapers came through and did trimming, I went and grabbed a couple of the cuttings that were left over. So this has been growing for about 4 years, and it has really taken off. This area, again, gets full sun. It's done really, really well in the ground. And then we have a very sad container over here. So this also had some echeverias, it had some ghost plant, it had some sedums, gracillas. They have all since burned up, and you can see the only thing left is agaves, aloes, and mangave. The mangave is definitely doing the best. These aloes do pretty well in full sun, but they can get a little burned as well. And then this I just planted a couple weeks ago, and you can see it's really small, so it's not doing super well, but it is starting to root, so it should keep growing. This was probably one of the sadder casualties. This I'd had in a super shaded area last year, and it did survive the summer, all the plants that were in there. This year, we didn't have that same shaded area. We made some adjustments to our yard, and it has not done well in this area. More agave pups from neighbors. These I did put in pots, and they're growing really well. They didn't have any roots or anything when I got them, so and they were planted in the heat of the summer. I think I just got those maybe a month ago, so it was in July or August when we planted those. This is the cuttings from a giant panda plant I got a couple years ago. These are the remaining cuttings and plants, and while they've not done incredibly well, they have survived. So this is one that I would love to get in a little bit of a shadier area next summer, so that it can really fill out and do a lot better. And then this was just a bunch of scrap plants, like random plants that I'd gotten from friends or neighbors. And you can see there's a bunch of little mother of thousands that have fallen in here. So this area did not fare super well, but some things survived. So it is impressive to me. We got another one of those aloes that's done really well. This is a mangave that actually our rabbits, a little over a year ago, ate it down to where it was just bare. There wasn't anything. And it's taken about a year, but it finally has some new growth coming in. A little baby right here. More of that same aloe. Mother of Thousands has done well in this area. It's just shaded enough. It's right here by the fence, and so it doesn't get a ton of direct sun, but it does get a little bit. This is a little copper spoons that I grew from a leaf. So that one's kind of fun to see that thriving in there. String of Dolphins did not do well when I brought it outside here. I think it's still alive. I may chop it up and see if I can get it to grow a little bit more, but it has not done well. And then this is an impressive trade to me. Most of these are leaf cuttings, except for this Anacampsaros Sunrise. That one is just a random plant that I had sitting out. But all of these little kalanchoes, I guess most of the babies now have actually died, other than the panda plant there. But this is one that I kind of just threw stuff out here to see how it would do. Same with this. The Mother of Thousands has done well in this section. Panda plant has done okay, but not great. But again, this area does still get some direct sun, and it's only been watered about once a week. Ideally with these, I'd probably be watering it twice a week just because of the intense heat and intense sunlight, but that's just not how it worked out. So overall, things have done pretty well back here. They could definitely use a little bit more shade and a little bit more water in the summer, but I have things that have survived, and I'm happy with how it's worked out and the amount of effort that I've had to put into it. So that's something else to consider too. If you want something that's low maintenance, you need to find plants that are low maintenance for your area. So the last few summers, I've really learned what works well here and what doesn't. So for things that I don't want to take care of, agaves are a winner, mangaves are a winner, elephant bush definitely, and then also some different cactus varieties. So you can see succulents can grow outside in Arizona in the summer. You just have to pay attention to how much sunlight they're getting, how much water they're getting, and really keeping them shaded or protected during those really hot times of year. So this is also a good warning to you that full sun is kind of an ambiguous thing. Full sun really depends on your climate, how intense the temperatures are, how much full sun you actually get, and really just the types of varieties that you're growing. So before you dive in and just plant all your full sun succulents outside in full sun, make sure you know which ones are actually going to do well there, or be willing to experiment and lose some succulents like I have done here. But really pay attention to the temperatures that get combined with that full sun, and you'll have a lot more success keeping your succulents alive. And if you'd like to get help with your succulent garden, get some personalized feedback on your setup, or ask questions about your climate, come join us in the Succulent Lovers Club. So I'll have a link in the description below, or you can also go to succulentsandsunshine.com/succulent club. And in there you can post questions, you can join our live Q&As that we have twice a month, and we also have guest workshops, guest speakers coming each month talking about a different topic related to succulents. So it's a ton of fun. It's a great way to really kickstart your succulent journey, help you get the information that you need quickly that you can start implementing to help your succulents look their very best.